The initial impact would have instantaneously vaporized over 72.8 billion tons of solid rock.
You would be able to hear this blast around the world, probably multiple times going around it. We know from human history that when Krakatoa, the great eruption, occurred in Indonesia, that people heard it in the mainland and other parts of Eurasia. And it certainly was detected by barometers all the way around the world. This is something far larger. So you could probably hear this all the way around the world. There may have even been noticeable earthquakes spreading out from it around the world. And then things would begin to get really weird.
The impact of the asteroid striking the ocean would set off its next form of destruction: tidal waves. But these weren't just any tidal waves. These tsunamis were over 3 miles high.
At the time of the impact site itself was under a shallow sea of 100 feet deep. And so very naturally, one of the immediate effects of the impact itself was to launch an enormous tsunami. This is unlike any tsunami any human has ever witnessed. We're talking kilometers height of water moving across what was then the early Gulf of Mexico.
After the initial impact flash, shock waves, and tsunamis, things began to really heat up.
The upper atmosphere would heat to maybe 1,200, 1,500 degrees, hotter than the elements in your oven on self-clean. Another way of looking at it is that 20% of 100 million megatons is 20 million megatons, which amounts to a 1 megaton hydrogen bomb at 6-kilometer intervals all around the planet. The heat from the upper atmosphere would have ignited fires everywhere that fuel was available, and the quantity of energy probably hit several thousand degrees on the surface for several hours, hot enough to melt the steel.
The vaporized material blown out of the crater in this big expanding fireball, if you will, that was hundreds of kilometers across, glowing as hot as the sun. So you've got these little millimeter and dust size little beads of glassy material recondensing from that vaporized rock, raining back through the atmosphere all across the entire planet. Tens and tens of billions of tons of this stuff. The combined effect of all these trillions upon trillions of re-entering meteorites shock heated the upper atmosphere to the point that for us standing on the surface of the Earth looking up, for all the world, it looked like the whole atmosphere had been turned into a pizza oven.
For those plants and animals who survived the initial impact, fires, and darkness, the asteroid impact had one more deadly gift for Earth: a chemical assault.
If you had to choose the worst possible place on Earth for an asteroid to strike, it would have been the exact spot where the Baptistina asteroid struck in the Yucatan. Because lying beneath the seafloor, directly under the spot where the asteroid struck, were layers upon layers of anhydrite and limestone. Now normally these minerals are perfectly harmless, but something very nasty happens when you add intense heat and pressure and mix that with water. And trust me, a 100 million megaton explosion caused a heck of a lot of heat and a huge amount of pressure.
The end result was a deadly acid that rained down on the Earth.
Those materials are very bad to impact into because when you vaporize and distribute the vapor from those particular rocks, you turn the carbonate-containing limestone into greenhouse-warming CO2, carbon dioxide. You turn the sulfate-containing evaporite into sulfuric acid aerosols in the atmosphere. But then that sulfate acid aerosol tends to want to rain out of the atmosphere over time. And you've got this sulfuric acid rain dripping all over the landscape.
The impact that this asteroid had on the Earth was unparalleled. The power it released was greater than the combined force of man's entire nuclear arsenal.
Recreating the sequence of events that happened immediately following something as cataclysmic as this event can be difficult because so much of the evidence was obliterated at the moment of impact. But by relying on worldwide evidence, we can formulate a pretty accurate idea of what occurred.
scientists around the world and looking closely at the evidence, experts recreate the final moments of the dinosaurs. A countdown to Armageddon.